You're about to go through the most simple, easy to understand and comprehend course about n8n on YouTube. And I'm very confident in saying that because I've taken almost all of them, and I was a beginner not that long ago. And so I figured we needed something that was a little bit more digestible, a little bit more easy to understand. So regardless of if you're looking to master n8n so you can build automations that improve your life, that can improve your job, your business, or you want to go get clients and build automations for them, this is a great starting spot for you. There's going to be several videos within this course, and this video is going to be a high-level overview of terms and definitions so that you can understand what I'm actually talking about when we really get into the weeds of everything. So be sure to subscribe so you can see the following videos, like, and leave a comment if you have any questions about anything that I'm covering. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, what we're going to do in this video, we're going to make sure we're clear on all of the terminology that you need to know, because if you don't understand this, I'm telling you from experience, you're going to have a nightmare of a time building inside of n8n or really any automation tool. So this is going to go well beyond just automations. This is just terminology that you need to understand when it comes to artificial intelligence and AI. Okay, so anyways, why do we need automation? Well, this is pretty self-explanatory, but in layman's terms, what I would say is that automation can come in when you are repetitively doing a task over and over again that technology can handle. So if you're talking about creating a new marketing campaign, you're going to have a much harder time automating that, although some people would probably argue you could do that. But if you're talking about responding to an email, scheduling, I mean, there's like a million things that I do every day that I feel like I could automate, and probably the same with you. So the problem with manual decisions is they're usually based on feeling, intuition, and they're subjective, right? They're difficult to estimate the return on investment or how long they're going to take. And usually it's just going to waste a lot of time or money, or probably both. Now, if you're using a data-driven approach, you have logic, which is driven and objective. You have improved capacity to report results, and it's just going to require fewer resources. Now, automation is really important because it's basically going to enable consistent data-driven decisions. There's no emotion, there's no, second thoughts behind it. It's just data-driven and it rips. It reduces human error. There's no repetitive task, and it's going to free up resources for high-value work. So that marketing campaign, you can actually go focus on it instead of doing those day-to-day monotonous tasks that are not really moving the needle. So that is kind of at its core why automation is important. Now, this is kind of just a repeat of what I just said, but the most important thing that I want to hammer in is that automation is a much higher ROI. It frees up time. With automation, you're essentially freeing up and buying your time, which is such a crucial thing to understand. And that's the core purpose, because if you're selling a service to someone, for example, you can either help them make money, or save time. Like that's like the main three things. Obviously, there's health, wealth, and relationships, but if you can save someone time or save yourself time, it's usually a really good investment. So an automation at its core is just a predictable set of predetermined actions that transfer data from one point to another. That's like the most simple way to think about it. One point A, point B, and a set of actions that takes you between those points. Now, these are predictable actions, so the results are consistent and reliable as long as the inputs are the same. And the decision paths are based on these specific conditions. So it's actually about 10 years ago, I remember a tool came out called If This Then That. That was like the very first automation tool. So you can think of LLM automation, AI automation, as if this then that, but it's on steroids because it can use logic and it can actually think. And then it's simply data transfer. So just moving information between systems. So maybe from a form to a spreadsheet, from a spreadsheet to a notification, and so on and so forth. So to summarize this slide, we have predictable actions, we have predetermined steps, and we have data transfers. And these three things make up what automations actually are. So here's an example of what an automation would look like with a form submission workflow. So step one is the form is triggered because someone submits a form. And so from that trigger, you see we have our little workflow in here, but from that trigger, what we'll do is a company check. So the system will, in this example, the system will evaluate what kind of company is submitting the form based on predetermined criteria. So someone submits a form, and then that's where the AI intelligence comes in. It starts to evaluate what kind of company is submitting this form. Is this a nonprofit? Is this a technology company? Is this a gym? What is this? And so we'll have what's called conditional paths. And so conditional paths are essentially the different ways that you can take this automation. So for example, if there's no company, you ignore it. If you identify it as a low value company, you send it to email. If it's high value, it goes to the sheet for the salesperson to look at. If it's ideal, you send a notification so that you can call them immediately. And just by the way, these are all just kind of random examples just to prove the point. This isn't like a coherent flow necessarily. But step 4 is the data transfer. So the workflow transfers from the data submission, which is the form submission, to different destinations based on the company type. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. There's a million different ways I could have given that example, but I wanted to give it in the example of a company because we can understand how many different companies there actually are. How many different types of companies there actually are. Now let's talk about triggers. So what is a trigger? A trigger simply starts an automation workflow. So triggers have no entry arrow, only exits. So the trigger is Genesis. It's where it all begins. And there's a couple different types of triggers. There's manual, self-explanatory. You go and manually trigger the automation. There's scheduled. So every morning at 8 a.m. or 3 p.m. or noon, it's triggered. It could be daily. It could be hourly. It could be by the minute. And then application. So event-based webhooks. And this would be, let me give you an example here. So, I have a nice example in the PowerPoint. So an event occurs in the trigger app. So let's just say, for example, I have an automation set up that every time I get an Instagram comment, I respond automatically via LLM. So an event occurs in the Trigger app. A webhook sends a message from the event to the URL. So it sends it from Instagram to n8n in this case, and that's called the payload. The payload is basically the message that's being sent. So I like to think about, I go back to my elementary schooling, right? And I'm like, okay, payload. Well, payload, you have to pay someone to send something from one place to another. So that's how I think about that. And then response. The receiving app processes the data, in this case, ChatGPT, from the URL Instagram. So common examples, form submission, webhook received, property updated in CRM, new email received, scheduled daily at 8 a.m. Button clicked by the user. So these are just different types, manual, scheduled, and application-based. But triggers determine when your workflow runs and what initial data is available. Now, when you talk about filtering, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but this is arguably the most important part because if you don't have good filtering, you'll get trash output. Trash output, you may as well not even have the automation set in place in the first place. So filtering allows or blocks certain types of data from following specific paths based on predetermined conditions. So going back to that company example, it's like, okay, this type of company goes here. This company goes there. This company, throw it in the trash. We don't even need it, right? And the key functions are essentially, it routes data down different paths, like I was just saying. It creates conditional logic in workflows. Logic AI, that's where the AI automations come in. And it enables decision-making based off different values. So this prevents unnecessary processing of irrelevant data, aka you're not going to call that company that should actually be put in the trash. And in the diagram, you'll see, this is a very standard e-commerce example. Customer adds product to cart, gets put to the shopping cart, sends to the checkout, goes to the collect payment, goes to the credit card company, goes back to collect payment. The order is issued, shipping, sent to the inventory, and then so on and so forth. It repeats itself. So that's kind of like a very common example that, you probably bought something today and can use that as an example. Now, in terms of the core actions, what are actions? So actions allow you to interact with web applications on the web. They're primary building blocks of automation workflows. So each app, which I don't think I need to explain what an app is, provides a different set of possible actions, and actions connect different applications in a workflow, essentially. So it connects all these different applications based on the actions you take. So some common app actions. Well, you can have Google Sheets, update rows, create sheets, get spreadsheet data. Slack can send messages, get users, get channel information. Salesforce, get company info, create leads, associate leads. So actions are taken within the app and they're moved on to the next step. So best practices, you have to map everything before it. And it's almost like a business plan. If you think about a business, you're not just going to say, okay, I'm just going to go start a business. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to go. You're going to think about what's the product offer? What market are you going to go after? what are you going to price that offer? How are you going to market it? How are you going to sell it? How are you going to keep customer retention? How are you going to minimize churn when it happens? You're going to set up a plan of attack. And that's exactly what we're doing with mapping. You have to map it out before you actually build it. And that's what's so genius about n8n, the way they built out their workflows. I mean, it's brilliant the way they did it. And you can really understand before you start what the automation and workflow is going to look like. And you can see, oh, you know what? This might break down right here. This might be an issue. And so if you are mapping before building, you're going to ensure that you understand every piece of the equation that you need. And it's going to show the required tools and apps. You'll be able to estimate the workload. It's just going to give you a high level overview of everything that you need to know if you want to build this workflow. So, there's Miro, there's n8n, there's Make, all these different places allow you to create flowcharts. Now, you could create a flowchart in something like Miro, but I would recommend just doing it in n8n. That's one of the best parts about it. And so you list the process into parts. You break it into blocks. And then you link the parts with arrows. So you're able to see the data flow and which, it's flowing from here to here and here to here. And then you can verify for clarity and you just check, is everything good to go? Or, do I need to change something before it all breaks? Because there's nothing worse than spending hours building an automation just to realize it's not possible. So you need to make sure it's possible first and foremost. And to bring this to a conclusion, just to kind of hammer a couple of takeaways. So automation is all about data-driven decisions and improving efficiency. You need to understand triggers, filters, and actions. Always map your workflows before. And in the next video, we're going to be covering webhooks and APIs, a very important part of this whole equation. Actually, one of the most integral parts of it. So hopefully this video is helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe so you see the next videos in this series. But this is going to be the most comprehensive n8n tutorial for beginners. And I'm going to make sure that it's valuable and easy to digest, because my problem with all the n8n stuff that I was seeing, it's way too complex, especially if you don't have a technical background. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Let me know any questions you might have. I'll be sure to answer them. Thanks for checking it out.